Hello and welcome to the Incubator, the Biology Jobology podcast. We're continuing our teaching theme this month, so today I'm interviewing Dr. Jonathan Cornett, who's a professor at Lee University, and he primarily teaches there. He did his PhD at Emory, and then he moved on to do his postdoc at Yale, and then joined Lee's faculty in 2012. So let's start the show. So, Jonathan, tell me about what do you do now?
Yeah, so I am a biology professor at Lee University, which is a small private Christian liberal arts university. We're in Cleveland, Tennessee. So you probably have never been to this Cleveland. We're just outside of Chattanooga, and so I've been here. I just finished up my fourth year, and typical day for me, at least during the semester, it's primarily teaching. So I'm in the classroom probably on an average day about 3 hours a day. I'm either in the classroom for a lecture or in the lab for undergraduate lab section. And then I do, most days I'll have some time set aside for office hours where I'll meet with students and work through problems or questions they have. Or I do student advising as well. This is something that we do a lot at a teaching university. I think depending on the school you're at, some places have full-time academic advisors, that's what they do, but at Lee we have the faculty have each faculty member have a number of student advisees. So I'll meet with them to go over sort of their plan for the next semester, as well as questions about looking for internships and research opportunities, different things like that. And then the other thing that I do quite a bit just during my typical day is lesson planning, which is not what I did when I was in the lab all the time. But I spend quite a bit of time just sort of thinking about how is a lesson going to go over with my class. What are some ways I can make it engaging? What are some ideas that I can plan in there that help my students make connections that make the material more exciting for them, So, yeah.
So, what courses do you teach currently?
So I teach genetics. Actually, just since I've been here, I've developed an upper-level undergraduate elective course in cancer biology, which has been a lot of fun. And I teach a cell molecular lab along with one of my colleagues here. We team teach that laboratory course. Let's see. Occasionally, I don't do this every semester, but occasionally I'll teach a section or two of freshman biology labs, or the introductory, which has been fun. I get to go in and do some dissections and different things that I actually had not done since I was an undergraduate. So genetics is actually it's the main course that I teach, and that's what my graduate and postdoc work were both in genetics departments, and so yeah, it's really fun, but it's interesting because you get so specialized in grad school and doing postdoc research, and my focus was very much on molecular genetics, and now I'm teaching the course. It's much broader than that, right? And so I had especially my first year, but even still, I have to go back and spend a bit of time sort of refreshing, thinking about population genetics or transmission genetics, some of the classic experiments that I really I hadn't thought much about until I came back here. It had been years since I had really thought about a lot of the material that I teach. But yeah, genetics is the main one though. I teach that every semester. So it's been a lot of fun.
So I was wondering if you could go into how you ended up teaching at Lee. What did you do during your graduate and postdoc training that helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll start back actually at my undergrad. I don't know if I told you this or not, Will, but I was actually an undergraduate here at Lee. This is so I have this sort of full circle connection in coming back here. So I did my bachelor's degree in biology here, and then I actually when I finished up undergrad, I wanted to go get a PhD with the intention to teach at the college level, and so from there I went to Emory University and did my PhD in the genetics and molecular biology program there in Atlanta. And so I joined the lab of Xiaojing Li in the human genetics department there. So spent about 5.5 years in the Li lab, and we studied Huntington's disease there. Again, the focus was molecular biology and his genetics program. And from there, I went to the genetics department at Yale School of Medicine and did my postdoc in Tian Xu's lab. Tian's the vice chair of genetics there at Yale. And my research there was, the lab primarily is doing research related to cancer genetics, and what I was working on in Tian's lab was really developing methodology, and we're trying to develop new tools to do genetic screens in mammalian systems, either cells or mouse genetics, trying to increase the toolboxes, what's available there for doing sort of classic genetic screens, mutagenesis screens, and identifying mutations and mapping genes in mammalian systems. So we developed some tools using transposon mutagenesis in mouse models is really what I worked on there. And then I was in the Xu lab for 6 years, and from there I applied to several different jobs and came to Lee. So we came here in the fall of 2012, and I've been here ever since, so wrapping up my 4th year here.
You mentioned that in undergrad you wanted to teach, and obviously you teach currently. Did that passion for teaching stay with you throughout graduate school and postdoc, or was it something that you'd rediscovered later on?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So as an undergrad, I was here at a liberal arts school, and had a lot of one-on-one interaction with my faculty, which was really formative for me. And I also had a chance to do a lot of tutoring and teaching assistant work, like in some of the labs when I was an upperclassman, and I loved it. I loved teaching, and that was kind of my motivation starting graduate school was, hey, this is something I enjoy. I think I'd like to do this long term. I need to get a PhD. The thing I didn't have going into graduate school was a lot of research experience, and so going into it, I had this goal. I want to teach, and then when I got to grad school, I really did enjoy the lab. I enjoyed the research, and so when I finished my PhD, I was actually less sure, at that point what I wanted to do, because I thought about at that point actually. Applying for teaching positions just straight from the PhD program, and ultimately I decided to go and do a postdoc just to keep more options open. That was ultimately my thinking at that point, because I wasn't sure at that point if I wanted to have more of a research focus. And so, I talked with my graduate mentor about this, and we talked about pros and cons, and he was very supportive, but he also he helped sort of walk through the process with me, and sort of thinking about what options keep the most options open for me if I really was unsure at that point. So when I started my postdoc, teaching was still certainly in the back of my mind, and it was something that I was still interested in, and so I was looking for opportunities to continue to sort of get development in that area where I could, and then working in the lab primarily. So yeah, I would say as I worked through my postdoc, I got to a point where I was more comfortable with the thought that I wanted to do teaching primarily, and so so that was something that when I started my postdoc, I was very much up in the air, and as the postdoc went along, I decided that this was in fact what I wanted to do. So yeah.
You mentioned that you were exposed to teaching a bit in grad school. Would you be able to go into how you prepared yourself during your postdoc?
Yeah. This is a challenge, actually, right? If you're at a research university, especially as a graduate student or as a postdoc, the emphasis and the focus is really on being in the lab. So teaching opportunities at Yale are difficult to come by, right? For the undergraduates, the courses are taught by faculty with a few exceptions, and so for postdocs, it's a challenge. But what I did at Yale, and this is something that I think a lot of universities now have, are centers for development of teaching. Okay, and so what Yale has is what's called a Center for Teaching and Learning. That I started probably in my second year there. I started attending topical discussions and seminars on just different instructional tips, ideas for teaching, and they actually have each semester they do teaching forum seminar series, and so I started participating in those and just kind of going. There'd be, sometimes lunch discussions, or like a 6-week mini course talking about different ideas in sort of classroom preparation for lectures and things like that. So I took advantage of that, and that's something I would definitely encourage anyone who's thinking about teaching is take a look at your institution where you are and see first of all, what opportunities are there to get some teaching experience, but also what opportunities are there for training. And I think a lot of research universities now have these dedicated centers that are there to help develop either graduate students or postdocs that want to get teaching experience. So that was really helpful. The other thing that I did, since postdocs have very limited opportunities to teach at Yale, I looked in the surrounding area, actually, and there are quite a few colleges in the area. I actually got my last 2 years there. I got a position as an adjunct instructor at a small Catholic liberal arts school there in New Haven. Albertus Magnus College. I taught a single class there, and this was really important for me because I had this idea. Hey, I think I want to teach. I've done some teaching on a very limited basis as an undergraduate, and then as a teaching assistant in graduate school. I TA'd undergrad genetics 1 year, and I enjoyed it, but I had never actually gone in and just been in charge of a course, and prepped all the lectures and exams and everything. And so that experience at Albertus Magnus was really important for me, because it helped me, to really see what it would be like, to teach a course, the whole semester, all the material, and did I really like it? I think this is an important question where, you think, hey, do you think you can see yourself as a teacher? Well, I think if that's a direction that you see yourself going, I really, I would encourage anybody who's considering it to look for an opportunity to actually, teach a course. And so for me, that opportunity came as an adjunct instructor at a nearby college, but it worked out nicely. I didn't have to be on campus. Outside of the class time. I was there, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like an 8 a.m. class. So it was early morning. I'd go teach the class, and then just hop on a shuttle and then go down to the lab and do my bench work. And so through that process, I got a chance to sort of, see what it's like to teach undergraduates. I did actually find that I enjoyed it and found it rewarding, and that was important for me. It helped prepare me in the sense that I felt comfortable that this is something that I would enjoy doing, but it also, I think, helped prepare me in terms of being marketable when I actually applied for jobs, because this is something, if you look at job listings for tenure track and even non-tenure track teaching positions at universities, they almost always, they're going to list a strong preference for prior teaching experience. And so, if you're coming from a postdoc where the emphasis has been on, you need to be in the lab, you need to be at the bench, that's not a negative in any way, but if you're going to be primarily teaching day to day, which is what I do in my job, then they really strongly encourage you to have some teaching experience. It gives you the idea, do I really enjoy this? But it also it allows you to provide, as part of your application materials, you can provide course evaluations. They can sort of see how did your students respond to you as a professor. And so there's a lot of valuable information that you can include in your application package when you have some teaching experience. So those are the things that I did. So in terms of what I did in the postdoc, a lot of it was it wasn't necessarily a typical part of the postdoctoral training, but they were resources that were available. They were optional, at Yale. But I really, I took advantage of resources at the Center for Teaching and Learning, and then I just took the initiative to look sort of outside for opportunities. And so long as you can figure out a way to balance that in your routine, then I think it's a valuable experience. Yeah.
Could you go through the interview process at a small college?
Yeah. So for a lot of schools like Lee and some of the others that I applied to as well. I applied to a couple of positions. They actually will do a phone interview first, and they'll have a search committee of typically other faculty members in the department that have reviewed applicants and choose several to interview over the phone. And then you get invited for an on-campus interview. So for me, One of the things that I guess was not surprising necessarily, but it's a little bit different from what we think about day to day in a research setting. When I came to interview, actually the first thing I did that morning, the first day I was here, was to give a lecture to undergraduates. So I came in and gave a lecture to the undergrad genetics course, and so that was a part of my interview process. Was actually they contacted me probably, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks before I came, and sort of gave me the agenda, but they just gave me a topic and said, this is what we'd like you to prepare a lecture, and it basically went along with the material that they were covering at that point in the genetics course. So I prepped a lecture for pedigree analysis. Actually, is what I came and lectured on in my interview, and so that was the first thing I did. It was a really interesting experience, because you've got the classroom, the students there, and then the faculty, the search committee came in and observed me giving the lecture, and so they were sort of evaluating what my classroom might look like. How did I interact with the students? How was my lecture? Was it well organized? Did I answer questions well? And that sort of thing. And then I spent the rest of the morning meeting with different people in the department. So the department chair, and then the division coordinator for biology here. And then another thing that I don't know how typical this is, but this is pretty typical at Lee, was meeting with students. So often when you come here for interview, you might have lunch with a group of students from the department, and so we actually use that as an opportunity. The students can interact with an applicant and sort of give feedback to the search committee in terms of how did that go? How did you feel the interaction was? Did you feel like this is someone that would fit well in our department and such? So the students actually play some role in the interview process as well. So So and again, I'm not sure how typical that is, but that is certainly the case here. The other thing that I think is sort of unique at being at a smaller place. Not everyone who interviews here gets this experience, but our president, if he is available, he likes to try to sit down and meet with faculty applicants when they're in town interviewing. So when I came, I actually he happened to have some time available, so I had about an hour in the afternoon where I was meeting in the president's office, which I think this is again not, depending on the size of an institution, that's probably not a typical experience, but. So that was an interesting, kind of intimidating thing for me, coming in and sitting down with the president of the university and sort of not knowing what to expect there. But yeah, that was. I mean, I think the rest was for my interview process. Meeting with different groups of faculty in the department, either in meetings here on campus or lunch, dinner sort of interview. It was an all-day process, and then the next day it was a 2-day interview. And then I flew back to New Haven, got back to business.
You've been here for 4 years. What's been the biggest challenge for you in this transition to teaching?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges for me has been, our department is undergraduate only. We don't have a graduate program, and so One of the challenges, especially early on, was sort of learning sort of how to strike that balance between high expectations that I have for my students and sort of a recognition of their skill level and their knowledge level within the discipline. I guess a better way of saying it is I kind of you lose sight of what it was like as an undergraduate. The further you go along, and I had spent all these years in graduate school and postdoc in a very sort of focused setting, thinking about particular questions in science, and surrounded by other graduate students, postdocs, faculty members, and sort of reminding myself, I guess, of what it was like when I was 19 and just taking my first course in genetics as an undergrad, because I think that is an easy thing to lose sight of. Sort of, I just would assume, well, you should know this already. You know what I mean? So realizing and remembering sort of what students are coming into a class with already was a challenge. Another big challenge is just limitation of resources. Coming from a place like Yale, where you've got just great lab resources, you've got access to almost anything that you could want to come into a smaller place. So that's sometimes a challenge. We've got a new building, new laboratory space, and in terms of equipment and resources, I think we're well equipped for what we do. One place where it has been a challenge is limitation in terms of access to journals. Sometimes, at a place like Yale or at Emory, you've got access to whatever you want, immediately. Whereas here, sometimes I have to go through indirect route, maybe through the library. We won't necessarily have journal subscription to immediately access the article, and so I'll have to request that, and it takes a little bit more time. So things like that, in terms of resources that I would kind of have taken for granted before, where now I have to sort of think ahead, plan ahead a little bit better in terms of this may take me a few days to get access to something that I'm looking for. The other thing, well, I'll just tell you this: I was spoiled at Yale, especially. We had a great setup in the lab where, if you for instance had something you wanted autoclaved, you just stick some tape on it and leave it on the bench, and at some point in the day it would disappear, and then it would show up magically again later in the day. So little things like that, you just sort of again take it for granted, whereas that's not the case here. I could prep a buffer and leave it on the bench to be autoclaved, and I could come back the next week and it'll still be there. So those are things, some of the things that we had full-time help, technicians, people that were there to do just lab support. Those are things that we do ourselves here, which is, this is not a problem, but it's a little bit of a transition, from going from a mentality where, someone will do this part for me to coming here where, a lot of that prep work, I really have to be more deliberate in planning it out, making sure that I have everything that I need. Yeah. So those are a few of the challenges.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. I always just believed in the lab tech fairies for autoclaving and dishwashing.
Absolutely, and it's something that I think we should all go back and write a thank you letter, to the person who made the fly media, right?
So, how did you solve the two-body problem with your wife?
Yeah, the two-body problem. So this is interesting. So my wife Jennifer and I, we both now teach full-time on the faculty here at Lee, but this was not necessarily always a part of our plan. Jennifer's background is in mathematics education, and so when we got married, she taught in public schools. She was a math teacher, and actually we have twin boys. When our boys were born, they were born right about the time that we moved to New Haven, and I started my postdoc at Yale. And so at that point, Jen actually, she took a step back from working full time. We had twins, babies at home. We had just made this move, and so she transitioned from full time in public schools. But what was interesting is at that same time, when we moved to New Haven, she had just completed her graduate degree, and she started teaching part-time. She didn't leave the workplace completely, but she went from full-time to part-time. And when she did that, she transitioned from teaching in public schools to teaching at the university level. And so while we were in Connecticut, Jen taught part-time the whole 6 years we were there at a couple of universities there. She taught at Southern Connecticut State and Quinnipiac University. And so I think it was never really a part of her plan to stay in academia, to stay in higher education anyway. But she enjoyed the flexibility there of teaching part-time when the boys were babies. And then when we moved here, they were still early elementary age, and she continued to teach part-time here at Lee. And so I think for us, the two-body problem, this idea of both of us maintaining and finding an academic position was it was something that just due to the place where we were, in our family life, my wife was wanting to work part-time and be at home a lot with the boys when they were younger, and so that sort of led to us, when we were looking for jobs, I was really the one that was applying, and I think her plan really was always to kind of go back to public school eventually as the boys got older. And what happened to us, really serendipitous, I think, is she was teaching part-time here, and I got to tell you, she's great. She's a great teacher, and so when a position opened for a full-time math instructor, she really fit what they were looking for here, and they let her know, hey, this position is open. I encouraged her to apply for it. But for us, in many ways, I think it was we just got lucky, to be honest with you. But for us, the family dynamics were such that Jen really wanted to take some time and spend more time at home, and so I was certainly very supportive of that, and I'm glad she had that opportunity. And then as the boys got a little older, she decided to, when she was ready to go back to full time, she looked at working at the university as an option, and it worked out for her. So we have really been very fortunate in that sense, because I know a lot of people who have sort of had to split time, and one person is in one city and others in another city, and they have to figure out that dynamics, and it puts a lot of stress not only professionally but also at home. that it's a challenge for sure. Yeah, I don't know if that answers that one, Will.
Well, I mean, you were able to solve it. Even if there was a certain amount of luck involved, everything depends on luck, as you know. It's great to just hear that you were able to make it happen, because I've talked to some people who are just like, it can't happen. So it's nice to hear a success story every once in a while to prove that it can happen.
Yeah, I really, the other thing that I would add to that is, I think in a relationship, if you have a partner, you want to just have communication, open communication with them, both of you sort of sharing your goals, your ambitions, and just being supportive of each other is huge, and that's true, I think, in any relationship. But just being open and having communication, is really the key. But
when were you most discouraged about your career?
Yeah, so I would say during my time in my postdoc is kind of where I hit a wall in terms of discouragement, and really, for me, what was most discouraging was this trick of trying to find some kind of work-life balance. I think there's a lot of pressure to be productive in research, and that in and of itself is not intrinsically bad, but for me, I really I struggled to find a good balance where I was able to put everything I had into my work, and then come and put everything when I was at home to be at home, as opposed to I'm physically here but my mind is somewhere else, and that is really where there was sort of strain for me and discouragement, because I struggled finding that balance. And so what got me through that, this was a challenging time in my marriage, really, when we were there in Connecticut, young kids, and trying to work hard, and also be there and supportive for my wife, and be there with the kids when they're little, and so really, the support of a great woman, Jennifer, just spending time talking through my frustrations with her, and ultimately this is one of the points that really helped me. What we talked about earlier, how did I know and when did I know that I wanted to apply for a teaching job? This is one of the points that really helped solidify that for me, because I felt like the balance there between work and life would be more manageable, and at least for me, that I've found that has been the case. So I don't know, that I think was probably the peak of discouragement. I'm generally a pretty positive guy, and getting negative results or having to repeat experiments over and over, that sometimes can be frustrating, but it generally did not discourage me. I just sort of viewed it as a part of the process, and tried to keep an eye on the bigger picture, as well as an appreciation for sort of the process. If you can keep an appreciation of the process of, even when things aren't working, I'm still learning something, and there's some value to be had even in those failures, right? So for me, it was family and work sort of balance and dynamic that caused the most sort of internal tension and turmoil, but just being open and talking with my wife, and us sort of talking together and dreaming together about what is it that we want? What do we hope to get out of life, out of work, and then sort of going from there. That's how we got through it.
What encouragement can you give those discouraged with science in their careers?
Yeah. Well, I think one thing that I would say is try to keep a picture of why you pursued science to begin with. Presumably you're in this field, you're in this program because you find some joy just in the pursuit of scientific knowledge, and I think there's a lot of beauty there and encouragement just in enjoying the process. And so I would encourage people to do that, just to try to keep an eye on that bigger picture. But I'd also encourage someone that's really feeling discouraged with science specifically is just to keep in mind, and hopefully this is always an encouraging thing, is to keep in mind that at no point are you stuck. And this is something that I think we're getting better and better at in science and higher education, graduate and postdoc training, of letting people know what their options are. And this is what's so cool about this podcast that you're doing, Will, and just sort of letting people, making them aware of options that they have. But I would encourage them to remember you're not stuck. You have many options. As scientists, we are trained. We've got a lot of marketable skills, not just in research, not just in academia, but there are many options. And so I would encourage them to really think about what is it that you enjoy, what is it that you find purpose and fulfillment in, and aim for that. Try to if you're not getting that in your day-to-day now, what are some things that you can change? I think it's important to keep in mind that we are you're never stuck. There are always options and alternatives, and this is just one more opportunity to apply those science skills, critical thinking and analytical skills, and look for those opportunities that are going to be a better fit for you if you're not getting them where you are. So those are a couple encouraging words, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Appreciate your time and insight.
Absolutely, Will. Thank you.
All right. A big thanks to Dr. Jonathan Cornett for being our speaker today. And thank you to Protein Tech for sponsoring. And thank you for tuning in. And don't forget to rate us on iTunes. See you next month when we move to the world of consulting.